Harvard Divinity School.
Uses and abuses of power in alternative spiritualities. Implications for spiritual care of patients and communities. April 27th, 2023.
Yeah. First of all, I'm going to start by giving you a brief background information about the research that I've done. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. About the research that I've done. And actually, I'm a sociologist and I'm specialized in family research and separation and divorce, which not at first glance have anything to do with spirituality, but it actually does. And that is what my research is all about. I'm going to give you some core findings of what I found. And then I would have to go into narcissism and gaslighting and tell you what I mean when I use these terms and why this is gender specific in the area of separation and divorce, and what it has got to do with spirituality and nonviolent communication. And after that, it's going to take like probably half an hour or so. I'd like to get into the workshop phase of this hour that we have and ask you to think of like common beliefs and thoughts and truths that everybody thinks, yeah, that's logical, that's true, that might enable abuse or keep you stuck in abusive relationships. And then I'm going to show you the cycle of narcissistic abuse and would like you to maybe share or observations, or maybe you have experienced that, or you know this kind of cycles, not only in interpersonal relationships, but also in communities, at the workplace, wherever. And last but not least, I'd like to finish this session with a discussion about how we can build structures that are narcissism resilient. So yeah, as I said, I'm a sociologist, and we all know that divorce rates are quite high in the Western world. And even though it's quite a normality to get a divorce, it's still a life crisis, and it might have really severe negative impact on children and on parents in general. Financially, psychologically, emotionally, for children, the development, growing up in poverty very often after a divorce or separation. All these things are really have a very strong impact. But the good news is that if parents manage to separate in a good way, these negative impacts are minimized. But if they separate in a high conflict way, these impacts are very, very severe and long term. So, and that's why I focus on how parents separate. And I wanted to know why some parents manage to separate in a very cooperative way and others don't. That was my question. And so I thought the subgroup of intentional communities. What is that?
Allow recording?
Yeah.
Yes.
But I can't do anything. Yeah. It's running the show. I can't do anything here.
Well, I know how to fix it. They're requesting a local recording from you.
Yeah, okay.
So all that we have to do is just click.
Okay. That's easy. Deny. Okay.
And it's probably better. Yeah,
I'm fine. Yeah. Okay. So intentional communities, eco-villages, and where like smaller communities where spirituality always plays a role. So if you compare, like, this is what people think, the modern world being rather individualized, interpersonal relationships are more transactional, more anonymity, and big city life in big cities, money orientated, career orientated. That's what we think. And then the intentional communities, if you go to the websites, you always find people standing in a circle. Like this is a strong symbol for being connected. And then people get in the middle of the circle, showing their individuality, and then stepping into the circle again, showing that they are connected. And this, you know, in and out, they work with that as well. So you might think, or that was my hypothesis, that in intentional communities who want to be intentionally different to the modern world and live a sustainable life, ecologically and socially sustainable, but where they do community building, actively community building very often after Scott Peck. And they have decades of practice nowadays in consensual decision-making, rather than just majority votes, which tend to polarize societies. And they also practice the nonviolent communication. They do courses and trainings and practice it on an everyday level. And they're open to alternative concepts of family, of love, of partnership, often polyamory or open relationships. And of course, they want to connect to something higher, to spirituality in whatever sense it is. And they want to kind of overcome this materialistic lifestyle and be more connected with each other and with the planet. And if I talk about spirituality, or if you look at these intentional communities, eco-villages and so on, there is no one spirituality. It's a wide spectrum of spiritualities, you would have to say. New Age spiritualities from Eckhart Tolle to Osho, nature religions, tribal religions, a lot of Buddhism, yoga, meditation, dance, body work, you name it. It's all kind of in the realm of spirituality. And if you boil it down to what is spirituality actually, you might think it's something like you overcome your ego and you use your feelings by doing that. So this emotional work is very important in these communities. They also call it peace work. They want to increase harmony and peace and really feel their feelings, don't deny them, get in touch with them, with the inner child, hold space for that, live in the now, be present in the now. And also they want to learn to be really fully responsible for themselves. Yeah, not only for your life, but also for your feelings. It's your responsibility, what you feel, basically. That's why they don't want to blame others. They don't want to they don't want to show any victim mentality, but take full responsibility in order to forgive, really forgive, be mindful, be aware, and thus reaching something like a higher state, maybe enlightenment, happiness, content life. Yeah, that's in a nutshell what spirituality means. And they use all sorts of tools and methods to get there. So why do I tell you that? Because in my study, and I could compare parents who separated in the mainstream society with parents who separated in intentional communities. And I compared two samples, qualitative samples with in-depth interviews. And I found that if these three things come together, spirituality, nonviolent communication, and a rather biologistic gender concept, yeah, meaning because we're born as a man or as a woman determines our needs, our instincts, our lifestyle, our role in society. If these three things come together, we have a risk, it's not always the case, but there is a risk of gaslighting. So what is gaslighting? First, before I come to gaslighting, I need to talk about narcissism, because gaslighting typically happens in narcissistic relationships. So when I talk about gaslighting, I don't mean the narcissistic personality disorder, which needs to be diagnosed by a clinical psychologist, for example, and people need to suffer. They need to go and want to see somebody because they're not well. I'm talking about a personality style. Yeah, like some people are open, others are more closed up. Some people are very empathic. They're very good at feeling empathy. Some are not. Not everybody can feel empathy. It's a very crucial thing to understand. So there are people, and belongs to the narcissistic traits, who have trouble feeling empathy. They might feel some cognitive empathy, so they understand if you lose your job, you're probably sad, but they don't feel compassion for you. They have a high need for admiration, and they get that admiration often by devaluating others, putting others down subtly or openly. They compare and compete. This is what they're really good at. They want to be first. They want to win. They want to be the best. And they have a hard time admitting if they're not the best, that they're entitled to win. You know, they're entitled to have the best seat, to have special treatment, to speak to the manager, these kind of people. At the same time, they're really sensitive to feedback, and they tend to lie and do things secretly. Yeah, so you would think, well, that's easy then. It's just horrible people and I don't want to have anything to do with them. But unfortunately, it's not like that. These are very charismatic people. They're intelligent, they're funny, they're attractive, they're very successful on the dating market and also professionally. They think big, they have great ideas, they're really inspiring. So people are actually drawn to them. So you don't see it. Yeah, that is the trick. Plus, they're not all grandiose narcissists, like bragging and showing off. They can also be shy and vulnerable and have this grandiosity more in the inside, yeah, and feel like, why does nobody see how fantastic I am? Yeah, this kind of thing. And I mean, there's a variety of forms of narcissism. I'm just going to mention these three because they're important for the study. There is something called communal narcissism. And these are narcissists. They can be grandiose or vulnerable or covert, also, as they're called, who discovered the social field to get their narcissistic resources, yeah, to get validation. So you find them in NGOs, in the social field. I'm a professor for social work, so we find them there a lot. Activism, you know, for environmental, whatever it is. You find these people there and they have a big impact, and people look up to them because they're so strong and brave. That's how they appear. Yeah. So a narcissist is not, you can't detect them so easily because they have the two sides, really great, inspiring, funny, charismatic people, but also very dangerous. And I deliberately say dangerous because it can also fade into psychopathy, and then you have something really dark. And these people it's a fact. So, and what they do is, yeah, maybe to clarify that, often people say, aren't we all a bit narcissistic? And the thing is, we all have narcissistic needs. We all want to be heard and seen. We all want to have an impact. We want to be praised. We want to have control, reach our goals. But that's not narcissistic. That is actually a healthy self. And we don't harm others by wanting to reach our goals. Narcissists, people with narcissistic traits, harm others. Yeah. And they do that very often by gaslighting them, which is a psychological abuse, making victims seem or feel crazy, creating a surreal interpersonal environment. So they would tell you, what's wrong with you? You're so sensitive. Why are you overreacting? Look at you, how aggressive you are. You don't have control over your feelings. I didn't say that. They will deny facts and things like that. And gaslighting is a process. So not each time somebody says to you, oh, you're being aggressive is gaslighting. But if that happens in a relationship over a longer period of time, people start doubting themselves. They lose their sense of self. They start ruminating. They lose orientation. It's a severe form of abuse, which is not really acknowledged a lot. And they self-blame. That is a key to this gaslighting. What it is, people start thinking, yes, there's something wrong with me. I should actually see somebody. I'm a horrible person to be with. I should be thankful that he or she puts up with me. This kind of thing happens in gaslighting. So, and if you look at these triads, spirituality, biologistic, gender concepts, and non-violent communication, and add narcissism, everything is turned into the opposite, basically. Yeah. Spirituality becomes a field of competition. Who is better at spirituality? Who's more enlightened? And it becomes a field of self-focus. So you might initially have started spirituality to overcome the ego, but actually you focus on the ego. Yeah, you revolve around your feelings and nothing else matters but your feelings and what you think and feel and do. Nonviolent communication should actually increase peace and help reduce conflicts. But in the area of narcissism, it is absolutely disempowering because people cannot point out that something's wrong, that they're suffering injustice. Yeah, they can't say you did that because you shouldn't blame anybody. You should always, think about your feelings and talk about your feelings and never feel a victim and never blame anybody. So you can't point out injustice or power imbalances. And the biologistic gender concepts, they become like there's a power imbalance, in it, and that seems like something natural and thus disappears because it's natural. It must be right. Yeah, if you talk about biology, you can't really argue with that, and this field becomes how do I say? You can't point it out, the imbalances and the disadvantages that you have, men and women, fathers and mothers, because it's that's how it is. So, and how is that gender specific? And I brought some quotes from the interviews that I conducted with parents who separated and who talked in depth about their separation. So for example, you have Alice and Paul. They've been together for quite a while and been waiting for pregnancy. And finally, Alice got pregnant. They were really happy. Pregnancy was described as a phase of harmony and everything was great. They were looking forward. But then shortly after the baby was born, he was gone. I didn't understand the world anymore. We have a baby now. We are a family. Where is he? And then I got cross with him. I demanded and even shouted at him. And then he was so hurt and closed his heart. Yeah. So actually what she experienced was a real betrayal. And but she blames herself for shouting, which is quite understandable actually, but she blames herself. That is gaslighting. And Paul says, I really liked the baby, he's great, but I wasn't myself anymore with the baby. I was playing a role. I wasn't authentic. And I felt I needed to go my own way again. And then she started arguing that she did not want it that way, that I had to be there more. I think she was envious of me because I did my own thing and she didn't. So he presents himself as quite sensitive. He talks about his feelings. That's what you should do. He talks about authenticity. There can't be anything wrong with that. You want to be yourself, yeah? But in this context, yeah, he is entitled to his feelings, but she isn't. His feelings are right. Yeah, it's completely fine. Nobody wants to play a role. Of course, you have to leave them in any circumstances. So, and the second is here, Alice again. She insists that her pain has nothing to do with him. Yeah, she says, the pain is mine, mine, mine. She says it 3 times. She really insists on that. I learned to take his perspective and feel happy for him. Not insist on my way, but understand him. There is a global love that I am connected to. I learned to forgive, really forgive. So she takes full responsibility for her feelings, just like the emotional work would tell you to do. She takes his perspective, self-blame, trauma bonding. Yeah, you have to believe that he's right, or you can also have it the other way around. And then there's this idea of a global love, spiritual connection with the whole world, and that makes you then you don't actually need the love of a person. You're connected to the global love. You don't need anything else. And if you think of it, that means not having a relationship, not being connected becomes the ideal relationship. Yeah. And Paul says, things that are said in rage and aggression hurt me. I don't think that has anything to do with me. She just lets out her aggression towards me. I cannot be bothered with her uncontrolled rage and emotionality. Yeah, so he's hurt, he shows himself vulnerable. That is considered to be something good, but it's her fault. He doesn't work on his feelings. His feelings lead the way, and she changes her feelings. She completely twists them into the opposite. Yeah. So here you can see the gaslighting and the twist allowed by ideas of spirituality and nonviolent communication. Yeah, okay, this is some more here. And maybe this one, so you don't think it's always the man who's a narcissist. You have also Sarah, who says, talks about her ex-partner. I'm so advanced. He's a beginner in spiritual teachings, spiritual development. I dried out with him sexually, intellectually, emotionally. He did it all wrong. So many things he did not learn when he was a kid, so I don't blame him. He's a great father. I have to tell him everything and praise him if he does it okay. That works really well, but I can also shout at him. So you see, she puts him down. She basically cancels him as a man and as a person. He's just complete useless in any respect. But she uses this feminine ascribed ability of empathy, but it's only cognitive. Yeah, she does know everything about his childhood, the way he wasn't loved and he got mobbed and everything. And but that explains why he is so useless. She's not really compassionate. She's not really supporting him. She's just an explanation why she's in the right, and she has to teach him like a supervisor or a teacher or somebody to tell him everything, a mother, something like that. Yeah, so it's his fault. And by the way, I tried to also talk to Sarah's ex-partner, but he wasn't. He didn't want to give me an interview, which is actually not surprising if you think of that, because he's completely nullified. So, yeah, and now I would like to ask you, maybe you can really form smaller groups, 2, 3, 4 people, and think about some common beliefs, things that everybody would say, yeah, that's right, that enable narcissistic abuse. I give you an example what I mean. For example, it always takes 2, or there's never only one truth. These beliefs can actually keep you stuck, because with a narcissist, it doesn't always need 2, it needs 1. And there are facts, and there's not so many truths, and he has his truth, she has her truth, and it's all valid. No, it's not. It can be, but with a narcissist, with somebody with high narcissistic traits, this keeps you stuck and keeps you in the circle of self-blame. Yeah. Okay, can you do that? Should I do anything with the Zoom?
I'll come up and.
Yeah. And well, but maybe first I take some questions before you start, maybe also from Zoom. From Zoom.
Click stop sharing. Okay, perfect. Probably the easiest thing to do for questions is to have Zoom people put the little hand raise reaction, and so they can be called on. And then for people in the room, as we take questions, you will need the microphone. So I will actually bring that to you if you raise your hand and you're called on.
But this is just meant to be brief questions because people should now work in groups, but you see? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So I was just thinking to put Zoom rooms on to put them into
Breakout rooms.
breakout rooms. Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to do a few brief questions before breakout rooms or just go directly into breakout rooms? Because I'm not sure if we can do breakout rooms with recording.
Yes, I
Can we?
so. Well, I don't know.
Do you want to go into questions? Yes. Someone did have their hand raised a couple seconds ago. Nature Moves, would you like to ask a question?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's so interesting. I woke up this morning going, what is gaslighting? What does it mean? And here we are. Anyway, my question is, with all this information, and if you start to go, oh, wow, this sounds like me, and this sounds, on whatever side or whatever, what are you, it's like there's a lot of definition and identification and naming going on in this conversation, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's sort of like, well, what comes next in that process? And maybe you have that in your presentation, but that's the question I have when we start to recognize these patterns in our lives.
Yeah.
Thank
you very much for the question. Could I postpone the answer and proceed with the groups, and then we answer these questions and think about what shall we do with that, because it is such a big thing. Is that okay?
Totally. Thank you. Yes.
You can try to open them. It looks like the breakout rooms are going to be successful, so the people on Zoom should be routed into one or asked to join one. There we go. Sorry about that. I've never done breakout rooms with recording before, so I don't know how that works. Okay. Yeah, people are moving into it. Awesome. How long do you want to give? 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Yes. In the chat box, let them know. Yeah, can we let them know on Zoom that it's going to be 22 minutes since they're not like here or 22 past?
Oh, yeah. Are you moving to teacher? Everybody knows she's wanting to bring it all back. Wanting to bring everybody back together. Okay. 5 minutes. Sorry to interrupt.
In one of the students.
Okay. Back everybody in the Zoom room and in the real room. All right. Okay. So may I ask, have you come up with some truths or beliefs that might be dangerous?
there's just so many different things that could come up. But like we were just talking about, say, the Islamic perspective of nafs, that there's something that you should be overcoming in your inner jihad with Allah, and that if you're feeling like bad because of somebody else's behavior, that's your responsibility. Or in Buddhism, that all suffering is your perception, and in awakening is getting beyond your negative perception. And in Christianity, you know, to, you know, love thy neighbor as yourself, or forgiveness, the idea of forgiveness. So, you know, I would be the last person to say that we should do away with any of those things, but they can be problematic in the relationship between a narcissist and somebody else.
Absolutely. So maybe we should not talk about forgiveness, but maybe acceptance. Forgiveness. I don't know.
Somebody here, here, Jens from the Zoom room.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, and thank you for this really interesting talk. You mentioned earlier nonviolent communication in your presentation, and I'm just trying to think and translate that a bit more into religious sort of groups and spiritual communities. And I mean, you were saying that a lot of them use nonviolent communication, or at least claim that they do in some way or the other. And I think what came up for me quite strongly is that in many religious communities, there is an idea of purity, or some sort of, you know, like specific laws or rules that come out of an ideal, which is termed sometimes purity or something else. And that often involves not having negative thoughts or feelings. And that whenever one has a negative thought towards something that has happened to them, it's because they haven't worked enough on themselves. And I think that just is basically 101 gaslighting and abuse. And I think that from the experience of my work and the work that I and my colleagues have done, it's often used to sort of condone abuse, or to brush over it and just say, well, it's your own problem if you're having these negative feelings towards something that has happened.
Thank you. Thank you. That is very important. If you're not allowed to say anything negative or to point something out, because it's your projection. This is also something, yeah, you're just projecting something. Yeah, that's also a form of, might be, of gaslighting. Yeah, absolutely. So one more question from the room, and then Alma from the Zoom room.
Well, just real quick, to talk about practicing gratitude is one that you could probably use. Because if you just sit down, like, everybody has a decent life. You know, if you're healthy, if you have a roof over your head, I could see how a gaslighter could use that to negate somebody's experience of harm. Like, why don't you just be grateful? And Renata and I were talking about how that's difficult, because it is good to practice gratitude and it has like real physiological benefits. And then on the other hand, there are people who you hear they complain about everything, and you can't help but think like, you should just be grateful. And I've had that thought even, and then like I feel bad. I'm like, oh no, am I like a toxic positive person? So yeah, so that's probably something to play with.
Thank you. Thank you. There is this toxic positivity.
Speaking to this, there's a feedback here, right, from my computer. I don't know. Yeah, absolutely. What was I going to say? yeah, I think this should not be understood that gratitude is bad and you should never forgive. Yeah, but you should reflect and think of this is really, you know, forgiveness. You can forgive somebody who says sorry. Yeah, if somebody hurts you and he says, "Oh, I'm so sorry," you can forgive, and I'm not going to do it again. But if somebody blames you, you're just too sensitive. I didn't hurt you. It's because you're doing something wrong. Why should you forgive that? Yeah, this is just, you know, thinking about that. So Alma, please.
Well, what I've experienced in the group I was part of is there was this general thing about whatever the teacher gives you or does for you or talks to you, this is an honor. So that's where the sexual abuse happened, because and everybody turned a blind eye because to have sex with the leader, this is an honor. And so this whole thing about this is an honor was used all the time.
Thank you very much, Alma. That is very important, especially in the field of narcissistic abuse. Very often people say, oh God, he's such a genius, or she's so visionary. She has these fantastic ideas, or he, you know, and this allows them to do everything basically. And people oversee the abuse because they believe that this person is such a fantastic visionary leader, spiritual teacher. And I'm just not clever enough to understand yet. Thank you. Okay. So come to the next point. I think we still have time. Yeah. I have some more here, just in examples. Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, many of them have already been said. Don't blame others. Trust me. Trust me, very dangerous. Maybe you don't understand. You're not competent enough yet. You will learn. Later, you'll understand. Yeah, that's what also children, what a lot of children hear. You are solely responsible for your life and for your feelings. We're all on a path. You never know where people are. You have to forgive because they are in the process of developing. Be kind to yourself and to others. Everybody deserves a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance. That is a projection. Don't get stuck in the past. You have to forgive. He's a genius. Yeah. All these truths, they're not wrong. Yeah. But if they come together with a narcissistic person, they can become really very toxic. And we have to be aware of these kind of sayings. Yeah, and I'd like to present to you the cycle of abuse, of narcissistic abuse. No matter if you have a grandiose, a covert, or a communal narcissist, this cycle always basically happens. It starts with a so-called love bombing phase, where you feel so happy and connected, and you feel the luckiest person in the world that you found the right partner, the right job, the right community, the right spiritual teacher. And you have this really this feeling of happiness, and you found your twin flame or whatever you call it. And then the gaslighting starts with the devaluation, and you can't see it because you're still with the love bombing. You feel so seen by this person and so at home that you don't understand the gaslighting. And you have, obviously, it doesn't 1, 2, 3, it happens parallel. Yeah, you have a wonderful weekend, and then Monday morning, it's gaslighting time again. You know, you have this parallel. It's always both. And then very often in partnerships as well, you then have the discard, which is always very dramatic. It's hardly ever two people decide they lift apart and they want to live their own lives now and make their own decisions. But it's always a big drama, almost always, and also in other situations. And then very often the narcissistic person tries to hoover you back. And that very often works. And then you start again. Or you manage to step out, and then very often you face a smear campaign. And that is very often, if you compare it to cults, for example, if they leave the cult, that's the same thing. It's like a narcissistic circle. And then they have a very hard time because they lose their job, their friends, people talk about them. Very often they're very alone, even the families distance from them. And yeah, that's basically what happens. And it's very, it's very predictable. It basically, this is how it works. And now I'd like to ask you if you have maybe observed that in your spiritual communities or in your life, or if you have observed this cycle. As being a survivor of narcissistic abuse is, people very often get out of that with a trauma, with a complex trauma, need help, need psychological help. Suicides happen because you lose everything. You can lose everything, especially if it's a spiritual environment. And yeah, so just to present this cycle with you. And maybe we can come to the conclusion now. Yeah, another thing is it's always very dangerous to call out a narcissist. If you call it out, they, as I showed you in the presentation before, they twist it. Yeah, these twists happen all the time, and then you're the narcissist. You're to whatever it is. So don't do it. So what do you do? And me being a sociologist, I'm interested in the structure that enables narcissism. And how can we find structures, tools, ways to just prevent people with strong narcissistic traits from rising up and being in positions of leadership and decision-making?
Sponsored by the Program for the Evolution of Spirituality.
Copyright 2023, President and Fellows of Harvard College.